What's up, guys? How are you doing today? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. We are live doing a 12-team draft and going to be a little bit more excited than we were last week. So it does look like things are progressing in the right direction for getting everything ready to go in terms of getting the NFL up and running. So that is good news indeed, and very excited to see. What's up, DFS Hobby? How you doing? Don't do season long, only DFS. But yeah, dude, 50 days away. Finally are getting some inklings of the NFL getting their act together and potentially having a plan of being able to combat this coronavirus. So that is at least something positive for once. And it seems like there's going to be no preseason. So that is going to be a little bit weird. Haven't really talked too much about that in terms of how that's going to impact. That could be really difficult for rookies heading into 2020. We already expected this to be a rough season for rookies, but having no preseason games whatsoever, you think of guys like Joe Burrow that are going to be starting straight up into real football, don't even get a preseason to be able to do anything. So that is going to be a bit rough. And it's probably going to really impact all rookies, but especially quarterbacks and receivers. I would imagine not having a preseason is going to be a bit interesting. So, and then obviously starting a bit later with training camp. Now, at this point, things could delay even longer, and we don't really know if the season's going to start on time. I mean, they're still acting like they will. I don't necessarily mind not having a preseason either, but I do think it's going to be a bit interesting for some of the... Basically, if you have a team with more established options, I think that's going to end up being better in the long run. So if you're joining in to a brand new team, or there were a lot of different changes that took place over the course of the off season, it's going to be a lot harder for those teams to cope and be able to figure out how to respond to the just to how everything is going on. So the less change that has occurred, I think, is really going to end up benefiting a lot of teams in this crazy year. Wonder why it's not coming through for you. Are you saying it's pixelated, or what's going on here? Does that help at all? Let's see. Not sure what's going on. It's saying my stream status isn't necessarily going through. Are you seeing anything better now, or is it still pretty hard to read? Anyway, I didn't even talk about... I took Michael Thomas because I don't think I've taken him a single time. Oh, maybe. Okay. That probably would make sense. It's a little bit harder to see when you're looking on a phone. But hopefully this helps now that I'm showing the board. For some reason, I always forget to show the draft board. They default it to like this weird little slider view, which it's not too bad when it's just you looking at it, but you can't really see the whole draft that way. So as expected, you see a lot of running backs go in the first round. I took Michael Thomas. I don't normally do that, but I wanted to see what a 12-team draft would look like. If he falls to me at pick 7, I mean, the only other guy I'd really consider there would be Miles Sanders. And unfortunately, there's a point in time where you'd be able to start Michael Thomas and Miles Sanders, but the hype has kind of built him up to the point that he never escapes the first round, especially in these best ball drafts. Now, I will say, I'm almost I'm almost hopeful that here, that might work for you. I'm almost hopeful that the Eagles end up signing another running back just to scare people off of Miles Sanders and make his value go back down, because I really enjoyed getting him at a discount, and it's kind of sad that we can't anymore. I know that sounds a little crazy because I think he's going to get a pretty strong workload if they don't sign anyone else, but I'm still confident enough in his ability that even if they do sign someone like Devonta Freeman or LaShawn McCoy, I'm really not worried about what that's going to end up doing. So this guy's going the Kansas City stack approach, taking Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Uh, I'm working on getting together with a podcaster that has a pretty interesting approach to how he does best ball drafts, and taking a little bit more of a mathematical approach, but also explaining like the differences between trying to build a balanced roster or really just going full into making sure that you're hitting all the stacks, and basically looking at expected value. And I mean, because really with these types of drafts, you have to hit on a lot of things for them to go well. But hitting stacks in best ball drafts are normally it's a really good idea, because if your quarterback's outperforming, then that probably means a couple other players around him are outperforming as well. And that's what you really need in order for a 12, like to win in a 12-team best ball draft, is you need a lot of high performers. So at this point, let's see who we still got here. I'm looking at guys like Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, and Austin Eckler are the only guys I still have in my tier 5. I am not opposed to taking more of a robust wide receiver approach because of how heavy running backs go in the first couple of rounds, especially when you're drafting near the middle part of the draft. It's always kind of difficult, because unless you're going to jump up and take Miles Sanders at pick 7, or I guess you could make an argument for Joe Mixon once this tier guys has gone, then Michael Thomas, Devonta Adams give you a pretty big disparity over the rest of the receivers, at least in my opinion. And with both the tight ends going here, I'm not going to jump for receiver. I think we're going to go. I don't have much Aaron Jones or Nick Chubb in best ball, but in terms of upside, I think Aaron Jones gives us a bit more upside week to week, a little bit more boom bust, and we'll start our 12-team best ball draft with Michael Thomas and Aaron Jones and see what ends up coming back to us around. Now, I would argue like pick 7 through 9 is arguably the worst spot to draft from this year. You can still do it, but this will definitely stretch you a bit. I don't like picking in the middle generally, and especially when there is a pretty big drop-off after the first couple picks. And typically Michael Thomas doesn't even fall to pick 7, so you're normally stuck with, well, I guess pick 8 would probably be worse, because with Derrick Henry signing, I know that probably shouldn't impact him too much for the current season, but I do think it at least helps solidify what they're continuing to want to do with that team. And just going through, I've been working on the last bit of my player breakdown videos and just looking at how good Derrick Henry has been. I'm a little bit warmer on taking him, but he does still concern me in a PPR league, just with that lack of targets. Now, they should increase his targets. He actually has one of the highest yards per target of all running backs. He just doesn't get work. And I'm with you, DFS Hobby. I do think that Thomas is not going to hit the same ceiling that he did last year, but he's pretty much a lock to hit 300 fantasy points if he finishes the season, which is going to put him at least in the top 3. I was tempted to take Devonta Adams, but I'm kind of glad I didn't, since I went with Aaron Jones. I don't really like mixing receiver and running back. That kind of like is counterintuitive. DJ Moore has been jumping up more and more as well. I absolutely love DJ Moore this year, but his ADP is getting frustrating because I really enjoy being able to get him at the back end of the 3rd. And now you see he typically goes in like the 2nd round, and pretty much means that I don't get him nearly as much as I used to, which is why, like, if you guys are into doing these types of drafts, it's actually really nice to start earlier, because if you have preferences and you have players that you really like, the odds of you getting them early on, you can take advantage of the ADP discount of some of the people that will come on later. So like DJ Moore's ADP started somewhere in like the early 4th, late 3rd round, and now it's all the way up to like the back end of the 2nd. So I was able to acquire him a lot more over the past couple months than I have been in like the past week or so. And I don't really see that changing, honestly. DJ Moore was an absolute beast last year, but we do still have a few other receivers around him in the same tier that I'm hoping someone else falls to us. I'm definitely comfortable taking two receivers in the first 3 rounds and just punching running back for a bit, but we'll see what ends up falling. Where are we at? Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes off, so in terms of running backs, I don't think Todd Gurley is going to fall. Okay, now that one's interesting to me. I want to pause and go back because David Johnson was another guy I was looking at, and we're going to be releasing a video on him pretty soon as well. I hate Bill O'Brien so much because when you look at the efficiency metrics between David Johnson and Duke Johnson and what you are trying to end up expecting from either of them, there really is no reason that they should give David Johnson the majority of the work. But because of that, I foresee him actually getting the majority of the work because most of the time you can assume rational coaching, but when you have an irrational coach like Bill O'Brien, well, then I'm just going to expect him to do the more irrational thing, right? And David Johnson going in the 3rd round, that just grosses me out. And I don't really know what has been happening. His ADP apparently has been skyrocketing because last I had checked, it was at least in the 4th, sometimes even into the 5th round. So we're about to have our pick come up here. We missed out on all of our tier 3 wide receivers. We have a pretty big group of guys in tier 4. Guys like Odell Beckham, Juju Smith-Schuster, Adam Thielen, Robert Woods. Probably going to attack that. The other guys in my tier 6 of running backs that I would consider here would be Melvin Gordon or Jonathan Taylor. I have a lot of Jonathan Taylor. I don't have much Leonard Fournette, and I kind of want to avoid him right now. Let's see here. Let's take Juju. I don't have enough Juju, and honestly, like people have forgotten how dominant Juju Smith-Schuster was in his first few years. And last year, the absolute destruction of his fantasy value had a lot to do with Big Ben getting hurt, but it also had a lot to do with the injuries that Juju had sustained. He had a toe injury in preseason. He had a concussion and another soft tissue issue. I mean, and granted, you can use that against him to say, well, maybe he's injury prone, but overall, man, like Juju is a really good receiver. And if Ben Roethlisberger is even 80% of what he was in 2018, Juju is going to smash his ADP. Now, why can't you trust Teddy Bridgewater? I want to ask you that directly because Teddy Bridgewater was the 2nd most accurate quarterback in the NFL last year. And he was able to sustain the fantasy value of Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and Jared Cook over the 5-week span that he took over in New Orleans. And not Josh Allen. All Allens are terrible at quarterback, but Kyle Allen was like the stone worst quarterback last year. And DJ Moore still was able to maintain by week 15. He was the wide receiver 8, averaging I think 16.4 points per game, which was 11th amongst wide receivers through week 15. Then he had that concussion in week 16. So for you to argue that you can't trust Teddy Bridgewater, that means you have to expect him to do worse than Kyle Allen. I'm not I don't believe that at all. I mean, I don't think that Teddy Bridgewater is like the next hot thing, but I really don't think that it makes much sense to argue that he's going to be worse. And then you bring in Joe Brady from LSU, who was able to get an incredibly efficient season out of Joe Burrow, another quarterback that isn't really known for deep downfield accuracy. So you get this guy, Teddy Bridgewater, who's really accurate and throwing short and intermediate routes, and then you pair him with guys like Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, who are absolute beasts at creating yards after the catch. I think it's a perfect storm, and that defense is so terrible. They're going to have to score like 35 points if they ever want to win, and they play in one of the best offensive conferences or divisions in the NFL, in the NFC South. So to me, the Panthers are a perfect storm of great fantasy opportunity. You like the Cook Eckler Mahomes? Yeah, I was gonna think about taking Mahomes if Mahomes would have fallen. That would have been something I don't normally do. And honestly, this is the furthest I've seen Lamar Jackson fall in a while. I've been in a few of these drafts where Lamar Jackson has gone into the first round, which getting him in the third round, I'm starting to warm up to. I'm not normally down for that. Typically with quarterbacks going early, like knowing how easy it is to find a quarterback later in the draft, it's hard for me to do that, even with a guy like Lamar Jackson, because there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to repeat the same efficiency, although it's possible. Um, it's always such a huge price to pay when you're having to buy a quarterback in the second or third round when you look at the other guys you have to be giving up over him at positions that dry up a lot quicker, because we'll be able to find plenty of starting quarterbacks, all the way up until like round 14, even in best ball drafts. But if Lamar Jackson is able to maintain the same efficiency, which I don't project, but it's possible, if you could tell me that with a guaranteed certainty, I would definitely be on board with taking Lamar Jackson in the second round. I just don't think he's going to maintain that 8+ points per game advantage that he had over quarterback 2. Now, Team 11 is taking a very interesting strategy by taking no running backs and 2 tight ends in the first 4 rounds. I was with him when he took Kelsey, but in these best ball drafts that are not tight end premium, I don't fully follow why you would take 2 tight ends that early. In tight end premium, it at least makes a little more sense to me, but I don't understand why you would want to do that in a non-tight end premium, because you don't necessarily want your your tight end to fill your flex spot unless it's tight end premium. But I don't know. I guess Zach Ertz is the primary receiver for Philadelphia this year. So Teddy Bridgewater isn't a deep ball thrower, check down king. Well, yeah, Christian McCaffrey is going to do great, but DJ Moore also does good with short and intermediate routes. Plus, Teddy Bridgewater, although he doesn't go deep downfield often, he was actually top 5 in deep ball accuracy last year as well, so he can do it. Watch the game against Tampa Bay last year, and you'll see what I mean. So we're left with a conundrum here. I'm deciding between Melvin Gordon and Robert Woods. Melvin Gordon doesn't normally fall this far, and I'm not super high on him, but I do think that he represents a pretty big tier gap between the other running backs here. And I really like Robert Woods, but I have him in a lot of drafts. Do we keep punting running back and take Robert Woods? No, I think we can get a couple more receivers. Let's take Melvin Gordon, and then we won't have to worry about running back for a while. Yeah, back to Teddy Bridgewater. I don't expect him to throw the ball deep downfield often, and that's why I'm not really high on Robbie Anderson. Because Robbie Anderson going to the Panthers, it's going to help the remainder of the offense. Like, I think it's going to help Christian McCaffrey. It's going to help DJ Moore because they're going to stretch the field out a bit, and they're going to have to at least respect him because Teddy Bridgewater is accurate deep down the field. He doesn't go there very often. So I don't think Robbie Anderson is the answer. But Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and even Ian Thomas, those guys are all going to feast this year. Clearly, I was on the right path in thinking about Robert Woods. He goes right after my Melvin Gordon pick. It's fun to watch the ADP shift over time. Like, it starts out in June where you're happy with your picks all the way through 7 rounds, and then once you get to late July and then you get into August, you're disgusted by the guys by the time you get to round 3. Now, what's also going to be interesting without preseason is we typically have a couple people that will get hurt during the preseason, and you're not going to have that this year. So when you actually do your drafts, I still think it's going to be the best idea to wait until closer to the season to start, because there will probably be some injuries that occur during training camp. But without preseason, we're going to basically have the full pool of players, which is good in a sense, but it's also problematic because that means that anyone that was on the verge of getting hurt in the preseason is now just going to get hurt in week 1, and it's just going to cause mass chaos. So this is going to be an insane year overall. I mean, DJ Moore and Juju Smith Schuster are kind of similar players, right? Like DJ Moore plays a lot of his routes out of the slot as well. So even though he's the number one receiver on that team, I think Robbie Anderson will play in the X a lot and allow DJ Moore to move into the slot. So I don't think it necessarily matters that he's not going to see a ton of downfield targets because last year, freaking Kyle Allen couldn't throw downfield to save his life. And that didn't hurt DJ Moore. It definitely hurt Curtis Samuel, who had the most unrealized air yards in like the history of receivers of all time. But yeah, even if he's not throwing the ball downfield that much, I really don't see how that hurts DJ Moore. Just considering how the way that he plays, the routes that he runs, and the fact that he creates way more after he catches the ball rather than just he's like if it was Mike Evans, like if we're talking about Mike Evans and playing with Teddy Bridgewater, I would be really down. Like I don't think Mike Evans and Teddy Bridgewater would pair very well. But DJ Moore is like the perfect type of wide receiver for a guy like Teddy Bridgewater because Michael Thomas is the same way. He doesn't get the majority of his yards, 20, 30 yards down the field. His yards per reception is a little bit lower, but he creates a lot of yards after he catches the ball. So again, I don't really see it being as a detriment, but let's see where we're at here. I miss the days that DJ Chark would always fall to me in the fifth round. That was nice. But that's not the case anymore. Terry McLaurin as well. Like ADP has just gotten a little out of hand for some of these people, but it is what it is. Let's see what else we have. I'm not a fan of Cortland Sutton, and I am a little worried about Devontae Parker. I don't think I have Devontae Parker in any draft at this point, which is kind of depressing, actually. I just don't know that they're going to use Fitzpatrick for the entire year, which that's kind of concerning to me. So I actually going to like we've already pivoted and said we weren't going to go robust running back, but because we got Michael Thomas and Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm just going to make sure our running backs are good. I don't think I have any DeAndre Swift yet, and the more I look into him, the more I'm actually really liking what we have there in Detroit because I don't think Kerryon Johnson is really going to do much of anything, and he actually could very well lead rookie running backs in fantasy points this year because I think at least at this point, he and Cam Akers have the clearest path to targets and usage in the passing game. Jonathan Taylor is great, but they're gonna need to work him into the passing game for him to truly realize his upside. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire obviously could very well just blow up this year, but it's still dependent on them not giving Damian Williams touches. And honestly, again, with everything that's happening in 2020, it might take him a few weeks to develop. And the fact that you have to pay a second round price for him, I'm currently not in on taking Clyde where you have to take him. Back when I could get him in the third round, I was a bit more excited about it. I don't know, man. DJ Moore is incredibly athletic. Like he just hasn't played with Drew Brees. We'll make a side wager on this, and overall, I have DJ Moore finishing in the top six, I believe, at the receiver spot. Oh, let me just look over here what I have him. And yeah, right now I have him ranked at wide receiver 6, but I don't really see a world where he doesn't finish inside the top 10 if he plays the full season. So not going to argue a Michael Thomas season, but this is definitely if there was a receiver that was going to do what Chris Godwin did last year, I think DJ Moore is it. Yeah, and then the other thing that sucks about Devontae Parker is obviously if you look at his splits between when Preston Williams was healthy, he did a lot worse when Preston Williams was on the field. And although Preston Williams is still recovering, sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure what just happened there, but I think it's back up and running now. So to recap what you missed, we see Raheem Mostert, Stephon Diggs, Kareem Hunt, Jarvis Landry, and T.Y. Hilton go off the board. I took Cam Akers. Didn't catch when the stream froze, but I said Kareem Hunt's name, and every time I say Kareem Hunt's name, he goes off the board immediately after that. So that would have been who I was targeting here. But I start my rant off by saying I don't think rookies are going to do that great this year, and then I take 2 rookie running backs. So what do I know? But I do think that both DeAndre Swift and Cam Akers are in a spot to have to produce immediately. And if you're going to bet on any rookies this year, it has to be running backs, because running backs typically do not take as long to become acclimated to the offense. It's not nearly as complicated of a position to learn the offense as it is with like a receiver, where you have to develop a lot of rapport with the quarterback, especially not for like a quarterback. So if you're going to target any rookies this year, I give you permission to target rookie running backs. So we'll probably have to take another receiver at some point. I would have considered T.Y. Hilton. Marquise Brown, man, his range of outcomes is pretty huge. Like, he could be really good or really terrible, and his ADP just keeps going up and up and up and up. It was someone I was considering there for sure, but just couldn't get myself to push the button on him. So we're going to need to take another receiver here pretty soon, though. Only got Michael Thomas and Juju right now. As it stands right now, I'm actually surprised that with the arrival of Cam Newton, maybe this is something we can discuss in the chat as well. With the arrival of Cam Newton, does that give you more interest in the other receiving options, guys like Julian Edelman or N'Keal Harry? Does that pique any interest in you, or do you guys believe that Cam Newton is completely broken and isn't going to help them at all? Because I know that when it was Jarrett Stidham, absolutely no one wanted anything to do with any of the receiving options or even really the running backs in New England. And now that Cam Newton is there, personally, I'm a lot more interested in a guy like Julian Edelman. It bumped him up pretty considerably in my rankings. I think he jumped into that same tier with guys like Stephon Diggs, Devontae Parker. And I mean, last year he finished as a top 8 wide receiver. And even though his efficiency went down, he was still pretty good. And he was dealing with an injury for a good part of the year. So old, yes, not exciting, but a potential wide receiver 1 that you can get in round 7 or 8. It's kind of hard to ignore that upside. AJ Green is there too, which if AJ Green is there, we're just going to go for the jugular and hope that he comes back and plays a full season healthy, because I mean, it's been a while since we've seen him, but AJ Green is a beast, and he has more touchdowns in his career than Julio Jones, even though AJ Green has missed a significant portion of his career due to injury. So this guy will decide whether we take AJ Green or Julian Edelman with our next pick. So let's go AJ Green, and if Julian Edelman comes back to us, then we'll probably just do that. No reason to push up and grab quarterback just yet. I agree, man. Like, Cam Newton, not only does he have a chip on his shoulder now, like, you're playing for Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels, and Josh McDaniels was able to make Tim Tebow look good. So anyone that can make Tim Tebow look good, I'm not overly concerned that he's going to have struggles in making an offense with Cam Newton. So I think that people are sleeping on the Patriots right now, because we all had the mindset of shifting from Brady to Stidham meant that it was going to be garbage, just complete garbage across the board. And with Cam coming to town, I mean, the last time we saw Cam, he was still a top 6 fantasy quarterback. He actually saw an increase to his downfield accuracy. His play action accuracy was like the best in the league. And I don't know. I mean, there's 2 ways it could. I guess there's plenty of ways it can go, but I think there's 2 main ways that you can kind of perceive how they're going to use Cam. They're either A, going to preserve him and cut back on his rushing, so that way they can hopefully give him an extension into 2021, or B, they could look at it and say, hey, we just got a former MVP quarterback that we can run into the ground, because we're only paying him $1 million, if even, that's with incentives. Just run him into the ground and try to win this year. Do what the Ravens are doing with Lamar Jackson and see if you can beat us. But we know how to scheme a better defense and see if they can just reinvent the wheel with Cam Newton now at the helm. So as long as Cam Newton stays healthy, I don't see how he's not productive for fantasy, even if they scale back on his carries, because like I said, his accuracy was going up. Even though you could argue that his receiving core isn't that great. I mean, until 2018, he didn't really have a good receiving core in Carolina ever either. And he won the MVP with guys like Philly Brown and Ted Ginn as his main receivers. So I'm pretty excited for what Cam Newton's going to do. And we'll see where his ADP goes. Like, Cam Newton and Robert Gronkowski are two guys that I've actually been surprised that we haven't seen their ADPs rise much at this point. Like, I was expecting Gronk to jump up to like the 5th round by at least this point in the year, and it just hasn't happened yet. So maybe we're just waiting for that one Twitter video to come out where Tom Brady throws Robert Gronkowski like a 60-yard touchdown bomb, and that will cause his ADP to jump back up. But without preseason, I don't really know how many massive ADP swings we're going to end up getting, because every year you get like that, like last year with Dalvin Cook breaking off a massive touchdown run that causes ADP to skyrocket. Every year you get like a couple big plays by guys that were already getting some hype, and then once they do something in the preseason, it just catapults their ADP. But without the preseason, I don't really know if we can expect that to happen. So this is going to be the craziest year just in general. Something that we haven't seen before. And I mean, it's really going to end up being a really fun year for those of us that spend a lot of time in this, because it's going to give you the opportunity to really have a competitive advantage over the rest of your league mates if they're not following everything that's happening, because there's a lot that's going to be happening week in, week out. All right, so Julian Edelman went, and he was the last guy in that tier for me. So I'm considering just getting my stack here and grabbing Michael Thomas with Drew Brees. I don't have Drew Brees ranked as my next quarterback. I actually have Matt Ryan. I'm just wondering if it makes more sense to try to stack. And all these guys after me, well, I guess 2 of them don't have quarterbacks. So let's see what we've got at tight end. I was just talking him up in terms of Robert Gronkowski. Tyler Higbee is another guy, too, that I've talked about taking in the 8th round. I get it. Like, 5-game sample size isn't nearly enough to anoint him as the best tight end ever, but you can just go ahead and grab Gerald Everett in the 16th round and just guarantee that you're going to get the tight end for the Rams. Debating. Definitely nothing at running back that interests me. Maybe James White, but I already have 4 running backs. So at wide receiver, I would consider Darius Slayton, but I think I can get him later. Jarvis Landry is gone. Marvin Jones is gone. Either take Rob Gronkowski or Tyler Higbee here. Screw it. Let's go with what we feel is the best bet here. And if you take him in the 8th round and he busts, typically an 8th round pick isn't going to kill your team. I know that doesn't give you much excitement, but I think that his potential downside is being calculated into his ADP. So being able to get a guy with the potential upside of what Tyler Higbee was able to provide last year. I mean, Tyler Higbee was averaging more fantasy points than George Kittle, Travis Kelce, every tight end over the course of the last 5 weeks of the season. And Gerald Everett played for a portion of that time as well. And with Brandon Cooks gone, there's a massive amount of targets that are there to be distributed between the remainder of that team. I don't think Van Jefferson is going to command any type of massive workload in his first year. So I don't know. We'll see. This is an interesting team. I don't have anyone like any other teams like it. So pretty robust running back, taking Aaron Jones, Melvin Gordon, DeAndre Swift, and Cam Akers, and then grabbing Michael Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster, and AJ Green. Just guys that are all alphas on their team, but I guess Michael Thomas is the least injury prone, but Juju and AJ Green very injury prone. So this is kind of a fragile team overall. We'll see what we can jump in and grab. We're going to end up taking probably about 8 or 9 receivers to make up for that as we come closer to the end. Because, I mean, we have 20 rounds. So receivers later in the draft are typically the only guys that you can actually find people that you know are going to at least give you a couple of starting spots. You can't really find that with running back typically past like round 8 or 9 with the exception of a couple of handcuff backs. And we do need to start grabbing a quarterback here at some point. I think this is the first draft I'd been in where Matt Breida went before Jordan Howard, but I'm actually kind of in favor of that. I think Matt Breida definitely has a lower floor, but I think he has a higher ceiling. Like, what's the most that you could actually expect that Jordan Howard is going to be able to do for you? At least Matt Breida gives you a little bit of the unknown, someone you draft in the 8th round that could potentially break out, but we'll see. All right, so at this point, I'm crossing my fingers that Drew Brees makes it back to us so we can stack Drew Brees with Michael Thomas. I don't know that it's going to happen, but if that doesn't, I might just take Robert Gronkowski, and then I'll have my 2 tight ends. Don't really have to worry about taking another one until later. None of these guys have tight ends, so I'm guessing Robert Gronkowski will go between pick 98 and mine. But we'll see. I can't believe we're 50 days away from the season. It still feels like it's incredibly far away, but knowing how close it is, it still makes me nervous. Like everything that's going on right now, I really hope they get things figured out because I really want them to have football. And again, I think I even vented in my last stream. Like I know at the end of the day, I want the players to be safe, but man, I really just want there to be football. So I really hope they can figure something out that works. It looks like they're making progress in the right direction this year or this week with the Players Association. So I've got my hopes up a little bit more today than I did previously. So we'll see how it goes. All right, we might have to choose between Drew Brees and Rob Gronkowski here. Quarterbacks are really falling in this draft right now. I'm actually used to seeing Brady and Brees, and sometimes Stafford goes in like the 8th round. Carson Wentz is still here too, so quarterbacks are kind of falling right now. I have a feeling whatever I take will end up setting off a run. Because if you look at the teams, well, actually considering that everyone after me has a tight end except for Grush, I might just go quarterback. Because all these guys, other than Murray and Prescott being here, all these guys need a quarterback. So I think I could start a quarterback run if I take a quarterback next. All right. Let's do it. Let's do the stack. I'm going to take Drew Brees. I have Drew Brees and Tom Brady in the same tier. So I would have been fine with either of those guys. And if I had taken Tom Brady, then I could just hope that Gronk comes back. But I think stacking Brees and Michael Thomas is going to be a good thing. I'm not sure that I want to go the route of grabbing Ben Roethlisberger, but if he is cheap enough, I might do it. We'll see. Like I said, I'm expecting some quarterbacks to go off the board. If they don't, I'll actually be pretty surprised. Yeah, that's a fair point too. With older guys like Emmanuel Sanders did last year, came out pretty good and had a few big games within the first half of the season, and then by the end of the year, it kind of gassed out. So I do think that Edelman will have a few good games, especially early on. But it could slowly start to seed over to N'Keal Harry and Mohamed Sanu as the year goes on. But I mean, Edelman has found a way to keep producing even in the current state of his decrepit old age of, what is he now, 34? Oh, there he goes. So guy at the turn takes Brady and Gronkowski. That was a smart move. But at least with best ball, you don't have to try to decide when they're going to hit. Like, it just sets it for you. That's why these drafts are fun, at least to me. I don't know what you guys think, but not having to worry about your lineup every week, especially this year, it's, yeah. Yeah, this guy went completely zero running back. Started with Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, and Stephon Diggs, Dak Prescott, Travis Kelce, and Zach Ertz. And now he's coming back with taking all the running backs that fall 7th round. And Darius Geis I actually like a lot. Keyshawn Bond I'm interested in. Wouldn't want him as my RB2 though. Latavius Murray and Kerryon Johnson were not really into either of those guys, even in best ball. But so where are we at? I mean, I was expecting a lot of quarterbacks to go off the board. We'll probably end up taking Carson Wentz here or Matt Stafford. And then we don't have to worry about quarterback once more. Or frick, I could take Aaron Rodgers and stack him with Aaron Jones. Is that stupid? All right, so Carson Wentz went off the board. There's not any other receivers that I'm that interested in. Guess I could just do the triple stack and take Emmanuel Sanders. Oh, dude, I didn't know you were in Miami. You go to bed. Screw it. We're just gonna let's do it. I don't have enough Aaron Rodgers, and even though I don't think he'll finish as consistent, I do think he'll have enough massive games that it'll make it worth my while here. And now I don't have to worry about quarterback for a long time. So again, one of the more interesting teams I've made. Don't think I've ever drafted this group of guys like this before, but Michael Thomas, Aaron Jones, Juju, Melvin Gordon, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, AJ Green, Tyler Higbee, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers in the 10th round. At some point, yeah, we had to start seeing a bunch of quarterbacks go. Anyway, it's been fun. At this point, I think for the remainder of my strategy, I'm going to try to grab at least one more running back. I'm going to grab the majority of my last picks will be wide receivers. I need another tight end. Probably my next pick will be a tight end because it's looking like they're about to start running off the board. And then once we get another running back and tight end, probably just hit a bunch of receivers. Maybe grab a third quarterback at some point, but I'd actually be happy with just having Brees and Rodgers. And then we just need to start smashing wide receiver at some point, but yeah, I really hate pick 7 though. Like, it puts you into this weird spot where you're never actually happy with the people that fall to you. So you're either having to like grab the first guy in a tier or jump to another position that you feel like you need more. But it is what it is. I don't think I have any Noah Fant at this point. We could potentially go him. Zach Moss goes off on the board in the 10th round. I'm actually surprised. That's a pick that I would have figured the guy at slot 11 would have gone. Taking Zach Moss has been like a zero running back dream come true. Chase Edmonds is jumping up more and more recently as well. This guy didn't go zero RB. It's a really good receiver core right there. Well, anyway, I don't want to bore you guys. If you have questions, let me know. But I'm actually probably going to wrap up here, even though the draft is kind of winding down. We're getting to the boring part of the draft where it's not nearly as exciting. The core skeleton of our outline has been finished. We have all of our starters, so at some point we're just going to start just drilling down our list of receivers. This guy just took 3 tight ends back to back. I think he's OCD. Like I said, we're going to start doing some mock drafts here pretty soon as well. I think those will go a bit faster, and then we can talk about strategy a bit more. I'm kind of waiting until August 1st to do those. Wanted to see how many different players determined if they were going to sit the season out or not. They're saying they want players to have determined that by the 1st. So hopefully at that point we'll know. Johnny Smith was the guy I was looking at here. Now I'm not really excited about anyone. No, actually, forget. I like Blake Jarwin. So we'll just keep the tight end run going. But anyway, that's pretty much it from me. I don't want to keep the stream going that much longer. It's already been going for almost an hour. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, we'll be doing mock drafts here within a week or so. Working on getting a bunch of finishing up with the player breakdowns, and then August will be mostly focused on developing strategy videos for you guys, trying to work around the craziness of COVID-19 and everything that's happening in 2020. So stick around for that. But thank you guys so much for joining us. I appreciate you. And we'll see you guys in the next stream, next video, and we'll talk to you guys later.